Oh my gosh. Here we are. We are so close to being at the very beginning of 2026. And so I have a lot of goal setting, manifesting, new routine vibes that are floating around in my head. So before I get into this, I want to be really clear about my intent with this episode. This episode is not about making fun of people who did 75 hard. If you didn't see the title, that we are talking about the 75 hard challenge today. It's not about saying discipline is bad. You know, I love discipline. I am a Capricorn after all, and an eldest daughter. And it's not about pretending that hard things don't matter, that it's not important to try and push ourselves to do hard things. This episode is about examining what we are actually training when we follow super rigid self improvement programs and whether the skills that these types of programs are building are the ones that we think they are. So, if 75 Hard helped you get unstuck or gave you a bunch of momentum during a season where you really needed it, I love that for you. I'm so pumped for you. I'm obsessed. Live your dreams. Go off, be free. Because I think structure, it really can be incredibly supportive. But if you are thinking about trying it or you have tried it, because I am sure if, like me, you are seeing it pop up in every single social post ever, and you'll see it in January. If you haven't seen it yet, people will be saying, I'm starting a group because we're going to do 75 hard starting on this time. You will see it now that I've told you this. Red car theory, you know? So if you're thinking about trying it or you did try it and you didn't make it through and you kind of felt like something was wrong with you because you couldn't stick to it perfectly, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. If you are not familiar, 75 Hard is a 75-day challenge with a very specific rule set. You have to do 2 workouts a day. One of them has to be outside, which already for me, I'm like, oh, this is going to be rough in here in Seattle. Follow a very strict diet with no deviations. And I mean none, zero. You have to drink a gallon of water today every day, which would throw me out of the running immediately because I can't. I can barely drink a couple of cups of water. You have to read 10 pages of nonfiction every day. And then you have to take a daily progress photo and every single day, and you have to avoid all alcohol for 75 days. So there are aspects of this where I'm like, yeah, I could definitely do that part, but all of them all together is, as you can see, pretty intense. So the rule is that if you miss any part of this, even once, like one small thing, you have to start over at day one. So you start over, you do not get to that 75. You can't just start anew the next day. You're starting again at day one. So I've seen Reddit threads of people who have said that they've been doing 75 hard for like months, and it's legit because they have to keep starting over. So they have maybe missed a day or two in there, but they have to keep starting over from day one, which means that they truly are doing this forever and ever and ever. So the program is often described as a mental toughness challenge. It's not supposed to be a fitness challenge, though I know a lot of people kind of use it that way to get their bodies back in shape and all that good stuff. But the problem is that by following these rules perfectly for 75 days, you build discipline, confidence, and grit. And I think that framing really matters because this is not just about exercise or habits. It's about identity. It's about who you believe you are, who you believe yourself to be, and who you believe yourself to be when you succeed or when you fail. So let's talk about why programs like this are so appealing, especially to really smart, driven people. I'm going to tell you, when I initially saw this program come out years ago, I was kind of turned on by it. I'm not going to lie. I am someone who loves a challenge. I feel competitive, and I was really excited by a challenge like this. Ultimately, clear rules, they help reduce decision fatigue. That's why we have famous people like Steve Jobs who wears the same thing every day. When there are rules that you're just following, guidelines that you're following, there's no decisions to be made really. So you reduce decision fatigue. You don't have to think about it, right? You don't have to negotiate with yourself. You just kind of follow the plan. extremes also feel really productive. Believe me, a couple of workouts a day, that's serious. That it is serious and it feels serious. Starting over from the beginning feels like a punishment. It feels consequential. And there is a clear sense of progress and a clear sense of failure within these guidelines. And that can certainly be incredibly regulating, I think, especially if you are overwhelmed or anxious or you're trying to create a sense of control. Um, but again, if you are someone who is having difficulty regulating, or you're overwhelmed, or you're anxious, or you're struggling to gain control, none of that makes you weak. And I think this is kind of the crux of my issue with this program. It makes you human. Here is my first issue, and this one really matters. The 75 hard movement removes discernment, in my opinion. The same rules apply no matter who you are, no matter what season you're in, or like what your body or your life is asking for at this time. And while I know that might be seem small, I think it matters because adulthood and leadership require decision making, not just blind obedience, right? Like it requires you to discern what you are able to give, what you're able to do, what others might be able to give or do at a certain season in their life, not just following obedience for shits and gigs. You know what I'm saying? Real discipline, in my opinion, is not following rules when it's easy or when the rules are like doing the thinking for you, right? Real discipline is choosing again and again, even if your conditions are changing, even if, and learning to make new choices. Like leadership really is about pivoting and making new choices when you get new information, when things change. And this program doesn't really allow you to do that. In fact, you are punished if you do that. So when a program like this doesn't allow you to adjust, it's not teaching self-mastery, it's teaching compliance. And compliance can look like discipline. I know, but it doesn't build confidence. It builds dependency on external rules. And I will say, research backs this up. Motivation that comes from autonomy, meaning like you feel ownership over your own choices, is far more sustainable than motivation that comes from external control. And I think about this so much when I think about, you know, whether you're working for someone or working for yourself. There are so many ways that someone can be a good manager or a good leader, but the way that you're not a good manager, which is proven time and time again, are the people who are micromanaging their team members, or are you know, not celebrating their skill, right? There's this whole idea that if you want to keep good people, you have to continue to value their skill. You have to continue to want them to push back for things to get better. And that's, if that's not what you're going after, you're not actually looking for a leader. You're looking for someone who, you know, just follows the rules. So when, if, I guess I should say, if the structure disappears and so does the behavior, uh, this is not a failure necessarily. This is the nervous system doing its job. And research backs this up, right? Motivation that comes from autonomy, meaning like you feel ownership over your own choices, over your own schedule, your own doings, is more sustainable, far more sustainable actually, than motivation that comes from external control. And as I'm saying this, has anyone ever read the book? I believe it's by Gretchen Rubin, and it's called The Four Types. Ooh, if I'm remembering that correctly, I'll need to totally look that up. But the way that she has formatted these four types is how you respond to external and internal expectation. And there's different types of people, and certain people really respond well to external motivation. Other people really respond to internal. Some people respond really well to both internal and external. And then other people need to know why, right? There's like all these different things about it. And I found it really fascinating. You should go read it if you are curious about your type. But I think, especially if you're wondering about 75 hard, knowing the way that you function, 75 hard is something where, yes, there is that external expectation, but there's a lot of that internal motivation as well that is really in the control of external rules. Okay. So, anyway, all I'm saying is that when the structure disappears, often so does the behavior. And I don't think that's a personal failure. I think that's your nervous system doing what it's supposed to do. So, my second note here is that control is not the same as confidence. And as a Capricorn, that is hard. That's hard to swallow and to understand, but I 100% believe it. I think the second reason really matters. Um, Control feels like confidence when you are anxious. Okay. If everything is super planned and super rigid, you don't have to have any type of tolerance or any type of resilience for uncertainty and change. But confidence is not the absence of uncertainty, right? Like confidence is trusting yourself when you are met with uncertainty, trusting yourself inside of the uncertainty. And if your sense of self confidence depends on absolute perfect execution, oh my God, it's always going to be fragile. And coming from a recovering perfectionist and people pleaser and all of the isms, it will always be fragile if it is constantly determined. If your confidence is determined by external factors and or by perfect execution of whatever you're trying to achieve. So here's a line that I really want you to hear. If your confidence disappears the moment that the rules go away, it was not confidence, it was containment. Okay. There's research and it's on psychological flexibility, and it shows that people who can adapt to changing circumstances without collapsing emotionally are more resilient than the people who rely on rigid routines. And so I love knowing that because there was an episode long ago where we talked about like type A, type B, and it was more about circumstantial type A people. There are true type A people who are really rigid and they can follow the rules, and they are really organized and really motivated and all that stuff. And then there's type B, and there's this idea that people who are type B are not as good at being leaders. And you can say that too about introverts, that introverts are not as good at being leaders. But again, confidence and leadership really depends on this idea of psychological flexibility and how you are able to adapt and respond when things go differently than you planned. Mental toughness is not never messing up. It's not never faltering. It's not panicking, and it's being able to pivot and problem solve when you do falter. Now let's talk about the shame loop of 75 hard. This part is kind of subtle, I think, but I personally think it's incredibly important, and this is perhaps my biggest noticing of this program. In 75 hard, if you miss one task, you don't adjust, you don't repair, you don't have to bounce back, you legit are punished and you have to start over from the beginning. From the beginning. So even if you make it to day number 74 and you mess up on day 75, according to the rules of the program, you did not complete it. You have to start back at zero. You can't just wake up the day after and do that last day. That teaches, in my opinion, an all or nothing relationship with effort, which I think is so unhealthy. I think this matters because shame is a really powerful short-term motivator, but it is terrible for long-term change. Like absolutely terrible. Shame says you failed, so you have to start from zero, but repair and resilience says, something didn't work. Like this is new info. Let's respond. You know, programs teach you what they value by how they handle mistakes. And 75 hard values punishment over repair. That's what I think. It values punishment over repair in the name of discipline. So, if you're looking at some of the research too, that's all around self compassion, it shows that people who respond to setbacks like this with kindness and with grace, they are way more likely to re engage with their goals, not less. So if you are someone listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, like I am a self shamer to the max, learning to give yourself grace means that you can start to approach those topics, those things, those goals better because you've given yourself a little bit of a looser grip, you know? Resilience is not about like never falling off the wagon. It's about how quickly and how kindly you can come back. Which brings me to my fourth point here. This is where discipline gets confused, in my opinion, with disconnection. Okay. Stick with me on this. I don't think that ignoring your body is mental toughness. 2 workouts in a day, no rest days, fixed hydration targets. This would be insane. And I consider myself to be a very active person. This is nuts. And one of them to be outside feels a little over the top, especially if you are someone who can barely commit to getting one workout in a week. Okay. None of this is asking your body how it feels, what it needs. Does it need more rest? Does it actually need more water? Does it actually need just one long walk? Like, what does it actually look like? And I mean, if you're asking why this matters, it's because your ability to notice and respond to internal signals, your own internal signals, is directly tied to your own emotional regulation and decision making. When you train yourself to completely override your body, which, hello, so many of us have done this. Welcome to the millennials of the 90s. We have been taught to override our bodies in the name of discipline, in the name of restriction, right? And in my opinion, you do not become tougher. You just become like way less attuned. So you don't even know what you're actually feeling or what you actually need. And long term, that 100% leads to burnout. It leads to injury, and it leads to a lack of trust in yourself. So, mental toughness is not about silencing your body. It's about being able to listen without letting discomfort run your life. Like there are two sides of this coin. I do believe that sometimes we listen to our body so hard that we take cues that are maybe not fully the truth and we create a story and we tell ourselves, well, I should just rest. And suddenly that turns into 6 months of never working out or moving your body. And then you don't really feel good anyway. That's not actually self-care. It's lack of self-care disguised as self-care. But on the other side, self-care that says I'm going to do 2 workouts in a day and one of them has to be outside every day for 75 days. I also do not believe that is self-care. I don't believe that is discipline. I think that is in its own way binging. If you are someone who is listening who has struggled with disordered eating like I have, that all or nothing mindset, I'm going to eat all of this right now and then I'm going to go put my finger down my throat or take a laxative in order to get rid of it, all or nothing. It's so unhealthy, and this is proven time and time again. Now, let's talk about who this program is made for. It's made for people like me. It targets people, in my opinion, who already overfunction. Okay. I think this program is especially appealing to people who already push themselves really hard. People who equate effort with worth. I'm going to say that again. People who equate effort with worth. People who might already ignore their needs. People who are used to proving themselves through a certain level of output. And for those people, the growth edge isn't actually about more intensity. It's about discernment. This is truly one of my favorites. If you know me, you know I love going to a Barry's class. I love it. I think the energy is high. I love the vibe. I love the loud music. I love the dark lights. I love it. There was a season in my life a couple of years ago when I was going where I started saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a rebel and I'm going to not follow the rules. So when the instructor would say, I want you to sprint, I would listen to my body and be like, am I really able to sprint today? Is that really what I'm doing? And sometimes I would be like, you know what I'm going to do instead? Cheeky, I'm going to walk uphill instead. And I started letting my body tell me, hey, this is a run day. Like, this is a push day. We're going to freaking go. And then I let myself have the other days where I would go against what the instructor was saying. And I am a dedicated rule follower over here. I would let myself go against what the instructor was saying, not to be distracting, but to honor my own body's needs. And it was like a low risk way for me to start to become more in tune with what my body could actually do. What is my actual output that is not determined by how fast the person next to me is running, or that is not determined by what the instructor just cued, right? Like really learning to become clear and to discern for myself what my body needed. And if you're asking why this matters, it's because if your default pattern is over functioning, a program that rewards more effort just for continuing to like reinforce this same behavior is actually just continued over functioning and burnout with like a better marketing plan. Growth should expand your capacity, not shrink your self-trust. Yeah. Yeah. Growth should expand your capacity, not shrink your self-trust. So, okay, if not 75 hard, if you're listening to this before New Year and you're like, but I wanted to do a challenge. Okay. Like, also, you can do 75 hard if you want. This is just coming from me. You don't need to listen to me if you don't like it. You know what I mean? Just press next on that Apple phone of yours, But if you are curious, okay, so if not this, then what? Mental toughness is self-trust that has had more pressure applied to it. Okay. It's flexibility without collapse. That's how they build bridges so well. It's how they build buildings. They actually have flexibility within the buildings, within the bridges, so that they can move with the wind, right? It's flexibility without collapse. It is consistency without punishment. And it looks like non-negotiables that align with your values, not with somebody else's values or somebody else's aesthetic. Okay. It looks like systems that include rest, that include repair, and that include adjustment. So, research consistently shows that values based goals and psychological flexibility, I know I'm repeating myself, lead to greater long term adherence and then rigid ruled following. So, let me say that again. Research consistently, like this is not just one study, this is like over and over and over again, that values based goals and psychological flexibility, read resiliency, lead to greater long term adherence than rigid rule following. And if you are thinking about like values based goals, listen to the podcast from last week where we talked about the difference between manifesting and goal setting. There is this beautiful magic that happens when you have a vision, when you really know like what your values are and what you care about, what your dials are, and how that interacts with the goals that you are setting. Go back and listen to that if you haven't gotten to do it yet. But mental toughness is also about staying kind to yourself without going completely soft. There's a certain level of accountability, right? There's a certain amount of accountability that goes along with this. So, my closing notes here. In my personal viewpoint, if a program helps you trust yourself more, like I'm so in. If it teaches you that you can't be trusted unless you're being like monitored or policed, I'm so out. Like I think that is so out for 2026. You know what I'm saying? You do not need 75 days to prove to yourself that you are disciplined. I mean, you can do 75 days, but like what if we chose one of those things? One of those things would be an incredible feat. You know what I'm saying? You need systems that work with you as a person, with your humanity. not against it, because if you are setting these goals and you're not someone who lives in a place where you could work out outside, or if you are someone who you're a mom and you have, 3 kids under 7, and you're also a full-time at the office person, like, to expect yourself to be able to do this and get punished for not doing it against someone who is child free or who is single or who is having their parents pay their rent. I don't know. We just don't know the full story of everyone's stuff. And so I think to discount your own humanity, your own situation, your own life, your own story, your own trauma, your own background, whatever, to discount that in the name of a challenge that places people who can complete it on a pedestal, I'm not for it. You need systems that work with your humanity, not against it. So wow, that got me worked up. I'm going to leave you with this. Where are you proving instead of choosing? Like, ask yourself, am I trying to prove something with this, or am I truly making an honest choice for myself? What rule are you following that no longer fits your life? And what would discipline look like, your discipline for you personally, if it was rooted more in self-trust and self-accountability, right? Don't get lost in the I'm trusting myself, but it's actually just lack of accountability, right? Like, there is this beautiful balance. What would discipline look like if it was rooted in self-trust and self-accountability? Wow. Thanks for sticking with me through that, team. Again, if you are looking for a little bit more info on goal setting and manifesting, last week's episode, I love talking about it. I loved it. We've got a couple more episodes before the end of the year. I'm trying to push to get to episode number 50. So that means I will probably be releasing a bonus episode, most likely next week. But with that, if you have any questions, any thoughts, any feedback, any reflections, I would love to hear from you. If you have a review, a rating, or something that you'd love to add to our online profile on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, by all means, that is super duper helpful. I don't know where I'm going to take this podcast next year. I'm going to tell you, I probably will be taking a break as I re as I morph, as I evolve into whatever this exploratory project has been for me. And I'm always so grateful when the people who are listening provide me with some feedback or some thoughts or some takeaways. So if you have any of those for me, please send them my way. Other than that, wherever and whenever you are listening, thank you so, so much for being here. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye.